Hey everybody, it's Brady from Late Weather Forecast, and tonight I'm going to be doing a video on primarily there's currently Tropical Storm Henri, it's well soon to be Hurricane Henri, and also just briefly here in the beginning what is soon to be Hurricane Grace. So without further ado, let's get started here. And again, I'm just going to start really briefly on Grace. If you want to skip through that, no problem. I'll be talking about Henri in a minute. So. Again, Grace is currently, it's been spinning vigorously this whole time, but really has some nice convection firing up around the center now, rotating convection. And I expect this thing to fully become a hurricane probably by, I would assume by tomorrow morning, definitely. And, this could flirt, not only with Category 2 status, but strong Category 2 status. Maybe can't even rule out a major hurricane, even though it's unlikely for now, but you want to see some old-fashioned classic rapid intensification. That's what Grace is going to do. So take a quick look at Grace, the cone. It is going to approach. You can see we have hurricane warnings in effect, and it is going to approach. God, that is not in English. That's going to be a little bit hard, but still, this is the area it's going to be approaching. It's going to be approaching southeastern Mexico, so this is the threat. It does have a pretty large tropical storm force wind field for its rather small convective state at the moment, so I guess that's a little bit impressive. But again, expect strong winds, lots of storm surge, and heavy rainfall from this for a good portion of southeastern Mexico. I think this should stay north of Puebla, but there could be some gusty winds and also some potentially heavy rainfall as well for that area and to the north as well. Then and that's about it, I think, with Grace. I gotta get to Henri. It's not Henry. It's Henri. So don't ask me why. That's just how they call it. But here we'll go to Henri. Yep. Here we go. Here's the current cone for Henri. It's forecast to become a hurricane. I think it's going to become a hurricane by tomorrow. I think the National Hurricane Center is on a little bit of the weaker side, and that's fine. It's just being cautionary. It's not a bad move by the National Hurricane Center, but I think at some point they're going to upgrade that cone to Category 2 peak. We can't even rule out a major hurricane in terms of its peak offshore. So it's currently, as I record this, around 1:45 a.m. It's 65 miles per hour. It's 997 millibars. Recon went in there earlier, got some good information, found it pretty much maintained its intensity. So National Hurricane Center did a pretty good job in its estimate. The good news is we have all this new information that is of the use for our forecast. The bad news is the forecast is not trending in the right direction. Continuously throughout the day, the cone has been shifting back to the west, and currently have it forecast to make a landfall in southeastern Massachusetts. It wouldn't even shock me if this continues to shift a bit more west. A Long Island landfall certainly at play, Connecticut landfall at play, Rhode Island landfall, and a Massachusetts landfall are all at play as we speak this evening. I guess I guess I won't rule out a New Jersey landfall, a New York City, New Jersey landfall. I won't rule it out, but it's not the most. It's not likely as of now. But I won't rule it out. Just for Mother Nature's sake, can do some weird things. We'll shift, and again, some of the timing will shift here to that aspect. We're looking at a landfall, I think, Sunday night. It's hard to pinpoint when, but I think sometime really early Monday morning or Sunday night, really early Monday morning is when we could be looking at a landfall. So yeah, and this is going to be a multi-day event. This is not going to be a 6 to 10 hour period and the storm is just off for the good. No, this is going to be a multi-day event. where heavy rain, storm surge, strong winds for sure, stronger than usual winds for this part of the region will be taking in effect for potentially multiple days, Sunday and Monday. So this is not a 1 day, this is not a 6 hour event for that matter. Isaias was basically a 3 to 4 hour, 50 to 65 mile per hour wind gust event for a lot of southern New England last year. And this is not just, it's just not going to be the same event like Isaias. I don't recommend comparing the two. I don't recommend comparing this to Sandy either, because I don't think this is going to be, a 900 and 45 millibar storm at landfall. Sandy was one of a kind, and it's never going to happen again. That doesn't mean something similar won't happen, but it's not going to turn out like Sandy. So every storm is a new storm for a reason. It's going to play out differently. It's different circumstances, different synoptic setups. So don't expect every storm to turn out exactly like another one. That being said, this is going to take an unusual left turn. For this part of the region, it's going to get caught up in a trough. It's going to have high pressure blocking to the northeast and to the southeast, so it's going to get pretty trapped. It's have a nice double barrel high, setting up, basically covering the whole sector to the east, and that's going to really force it to get caught up in the trough to its west and take this little bit of a left turn, potentially stall, and then sit out, over Massachusetts, which would not be a good sign. This was 18Z, by the way, for reference. 0Z still loading in completely. So I won't go through all of it yet, but we'll take a look at 0Z GFS, which is completely loaded in. We can take a look here and see it gets this pretty strong, intensifies, down into the 960s millibar range, all the way down, to mid 960s, and brings this as a pretty good size category 1 at landfall. So that's something we're gonna have to watch as well. I can't pinpoint exactly where this landfall is going to be, but I mean, somewhere in this region is a good bet for landfall, I would say. As of right now, this is where I would bet on. Can't rule out something a little bit farther to the south and west. Can't rule out like a central Long Island landfall or something. But at the moment, it appears something between the Connecticut coastline and Cape Cod, or something between the Connecticut coastline and central Cape Cod is most likely, from the tip of Long Island to central Cape Cod, I guess would be a better way of putting it. But we'll take a look at currently what Henri is looking like. As that is Grace. Here is Henri. It's been working against, as you take a look here on satellite, I'll come right back to it. But it's been working against 25 to 35 knot shear all day long, until later this afternoon it started to work itself under some more 20 to 30 knot shear, and now it's starting to work its way under 20 to 25 knot shear. So shear is, we'll play back the times, play this timestamp back. You can see there's, it was pretty sheared, consistent, 30 to 35 knot shear going on, and then we can see it start to back off more, and it really backs up a good amount there, and then, it hasn't changed much in the past few hours. We'll get a new update, around 3 a.m. on current wind shear, but the wind shear is going to, you can see the green means it's more favorable for intensification. The yellow means it's average, it's moderate, and the red means it's not good for intensification. So, and the red usually means it's gonna weaken it many times. But in this case, it had persistent convection to the south, very intense convection to the south, that it was able, so intense it was able to help maintain its intensity and prevent the storm from decoupling. As I can show you here, it has this really intense convection. Imagine, the center being on the low-level center being on the edge of this convection here, and then you see where the bursting convection is down here. That's where the mid-level center is. And in order for this in a storm to intensify, it needs those to stack. most of the time. It needs those to stack in order to intensify a lot in a short period of time. Henri has been a unique circumstance where, despite being so decoupled and working against, not decoupled, but instead of working, instead of just decoupling and falling apart, it's been able to work its way against this really strong wind shear to the north and east and battle it and been able to maintain its intensity within 5 miles per hour for the last like 36 hours now, which is rather impressive. And that's kind of what's led to models to shift more and more west, because some models thought this was going to break down a little bit more. But it's been able to fire up convection all really the past 48 hours. It's fired up really solid convection, even longer than that, which is extremely impressive. So when shear subsides and this thing gets under that 5 to 10 knot wind shear, or even less than that, 15 to 20 knots, 10 to 15 knot wind shear, the surface temperatures are rather warm, and it's really going to work. You can see all the way to the southwest. Those are the Bahamas over there in Grand Bahama Island. So it's really not that far away, from the East Coast, but it is at the same time. So it's going to kind of meander a little bit again for the next 12-ish hours or so, still around this area. But in the next 24 to 48 hours, we're really going to see it take that turn to the northwest here, and we're expecting it to not only intensify but a good amount potentially. We'll see it again. It meanders a little bit over the next 12 hours or so, but then it's really going to start to take a turn up to the north, and then we're going to be looking for that little left turn there a little bit to the northwest as it will carve back into southern New England or the tip of Long Island potentially. So there's still some uncertainties with the storm for sure, but I'm going to continue to be following this really closely. Again, the threat, strong, very strong winds or potential, very strong wind potential, very heavy rainfall, potentially a multi-day flooding event. This could be, catastrophic rainfall for this area, which catastrophic in a hurricane, you typically think of, like 1 to 2 feet. But for here, it really, 8 to 12 inches is really all it takes for some catastrophic flooding here. Terrain, the way a lot of our towns are set up, it's a little bit different up here. So it makes it more problematic. We're not as equipped. And the terrain just isn't as built well enough to sustain, like a foot of rainfall in such a short period of time. We can take a foot of rainfall, over a week or so. Still probably be some flooding problems there, but over like a 2-day span, a foot of rain, could be a problem. So I'm not seeing any models indicating a foot of rain right now, but there is a ceiling for that kind of potential. So we'll have to keep that in mind as we get closer. In storm surge is definitely another threat. Astronomical high tides are in place currently at the moment. They'll be in place this weekend, and combine that with a Category 1 hurricane approaching that was stronger. It's going to carry that storm surge with it. So the stronger this hurricane gets, the larger the storm surge is going to get, because once it hits that peak intensity, that water's got nowhere to go but to come with the storm. So that's a Category 1 hurricane. It could bring like Category 2 storm surge. So you're not out of the woods even if this weakens to like a tropical storm. You're going to take that Category 2 storm surge with it. So there are a lot of uncertainties, but there are also a lot of things that are coming together in this forecast over the last 12 to 24 hours that have been pretty clear. There's been a little bit of shift to the west that could continue a little bit too, wouldn't be surprised. And it's also trended, I think, a little bit stronger, even though the National Hurricane Center cone hasn't upped the intensity. It's a big jump from 90 to 100 because there is no 95 mile per hour hurricane. They measure in knots, so they'll jump from 80 knots to 85 knots, and they'll up to 85 knots, and they'll round it up to 100 miles per hour. So they probably would have upped it to like 95 miles per hour if there was a 95 miles per hour, but there isn't. So there's some useless info you can take with you. But it's about 2 a.m. now, so I'm going to continue to look at models, get some sleep. Make sure you have a hurricane prep plan in place. Know your evacuation routes. If you live on the coastline and you might be affected by this, make sure you know how you can evacuate safely and have a place to place to stay, preferably away from the coast. Friends or family that live away from the coast, see if you can go there. And yeah, I'll be away the next couple days. I'll still be monitoring this. There'll be some gaps during the day where I'll be AWOL from this, missing model runs, but I promise you I'll be trying to do my best to keep you all informed as best as possible and give you some of my thoughts on this current storm. But be prepared. This could be a really big event for the Northeast that we're not used to. So um, again, make sure you have a plan in place. That's all I'm going to say. I said that in my Periscope tonight, and I'm going to say it again. Make sure you have an effective and safe plan in place if you're going to be significantly affected by this storm. So that's going to do it for me. I hope you all have a good night.